back to Miss Cindy's Kitchen. Today we're going to be making baked chicken legs. And then we'll also make roasted potatoes. So first off, we're going to make the baked chicken legs. This is about 5 pounds of chicken legs and about 18 individual drumstick chicken legs. And I've had them soaking in buttermilk for almost an hour.
Oh, okay.
And to the buttermilk, I added this Cajun seasoning. And so it's about 2 teaspoons of this Cajun seasoning and about 3 cups of buttermilk, which I mixed together. And then I put the chicken legs in to soak. And I got this idea from basically looking at a recipe for homemade fried chicken. So it's kind of the same idea, but we're going to be baking it in the oven. So as you can see, it's going to coat each individual drumstick, and also it gives it like 2 layers of flavor. So as if you soak it in the flavor and then put seasonings in your dry coating, you're going to have 2 layers of flavor. So just plain old buttermilk, 3 cups, and then 2 teaspoons of this Cajun style seasoning. This happens to be Kingsford, which is one of our favorites. It's also really good on fish. So now we're going to show you how we make the coating for the chicken legs.
So you use the buttermilk to help
It kind of tenderizes and flavors the meat.
Okay.
Because of the acid in the buttermilk, it kind of helps tenderize, and then helps you get 2 layers of flavor in the chicken, basically.
Oh, okay.
And because you need something for the dry coating to stick to, and you can see as I'm squeezing the chicken leg, you can see how completely squishy and soft it has gotten. So it's going to be extra tender. So for the coating, we're going to use about 1 cup of flour to 1 cup of breadcrumbs. And I'm just going to use this container, which is deep enough to mix up the seasoning as well as to coat the chicken legs. And then just regular breadcrumbs.
Okay.
The Italian style breadcrumbs, because they already have flavor in them.
Now I've heard people like use yogurt and egg and all kinds of different bindings, and then they use like cereal for the coating. And it's like, is this basically?
This is one version of making baked chicken. There's many. You can use the yogurt or egg wash to coat the chicken legs. This is one version that works well because you can get 2 layers of flavor in the meat.
Is this easier for you?
Yeah. And oftentimes cooking is a lot about what do you have on hand and what can you make with it. This is garlic salt. So probably about 2 teaspoons of garlic salt in the dry coating. And then Badia is a really good all-purpose seasoning. Probably about 1 teaspoon of that. Don't need to go overboard. And then I'm going to use a little bit more of the Cajun seasoning. This kind of packs a punch, so you don't want to go too overboard, so maybe about 1 teaspoon altogether. Because you want to give enough flavor to your batter so it will be apparent when you cook. And I can already tell with my nose and my throat that I put enough seasoning in here. So, and the other thing when you're breading chicken, you want to use 1 tongs for the wet and 1 for the dry. Otherwise, you're going to get your tongs coated in batter and it's harder to handle the chicken. So take your legs one at a time, put them in the batter, and you can either just shake them like this or use the tongs to rotate them. And then the nice squishy chicken legs, just put them on the baking sheet. In this, I put foil on the sheet pan and coated it with cooking spray, so that way the chicken won't stick. And cooking is very adaptive. You have your core idea and the core recipe that you want to use, and you can adapt it to what you have on hand or what your family's preferences are for seasonings and flavors.
So you could use like chipotle or
Chipotle is another
ranch
favorite. You can even maybe throw a packet of ranch in the seasoning mix. It's very flexible. It's all up to you. You take an idea and you adapt it to what you have on hand and what your family would prefer to eat. Oh, I got a dog leaning on my feet. She's got to get right up close and personal to everything I fix. So I'm going to actually use this to cook the spoon to spoon the coating onto the chicken legs. It's just a little bit easier. Otherwise, it's getting a little messy. So, just take your legs one at a time, put them in the coating, and then try not to drown your tongs. Stand them up a little bit. And it's also better to use a mixing bowl that's deeper for soaking the chicken legs, so that way you can raise the level of the buttermilk over the chicken legs. Because I've tried putting it in a flatter pan to marinate them in the buttermilk, and it doesn't coat them as much, and you have to use a lot more buttermilk. But a deeper bowl works well. And that's one thing is about having good equipment in your kitchen. You need a set of really useful mixing bowls, because you will use them all the time when you fix food. And if you have the right equipment, it makes cooking easier, and you're more likely to try new recipes or cook at home rather than trying to call up and order food all the time, which is actually healthier and easier on the budget. I mean, although groceries are expensive, it's still cheaper than takeout.
So about how long do you cook this for?
About an hour at 400. And I'm also going to cook the potatoes at that temperature also. So that way you can cook 2 dishes at the same time. Because potatoes make a great accompaniment to chicken. Dolly is watching every move I make. It's like the stalker song from The Police. Every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you.
Now, could you use this kind of breading to fry it rather than bake it?
I'm sure you could, but I haven't mastered frying chicken yet because I'm scared of hot oil in a pan. I'll fry fish in a shallow pan, but I haven't tried frying chicken yet.
I wonder how this will do in an air fryer.
Oh yeah, that's one thing that we can attempt soon is to try using an air fryer. Because my sister has one and she uses it a lot. Dolly is like, that sounds good. I'd like to try it in an air fryer too.
It all sounds good to me. It's just food in my belly.
And the crunch of the skin.
Yeah.
We've got about 4 more legs in here, so it's going to be a snug fit on the baking sheet.
We could probably scoot a few of them over and fit more.
Yeah, we'll make them all fit. Actually, put that there. And if you're done with the buttermilk, you can just, pour it down the sink. Because it's got salmonella and chicken remnants on it.
So how often do you make this dish?
I don't know, about once every couple of weeks.
The dog agrees.
It's not often enough. I want more chicken.
And so what is it? Just so curious, because the last meal you had was a roasted chicken. There was a whole chicken, and so could you adapt this recipe to like other parts of, not just chicken legs, but like quarters or breasts or?
Yeah, any chicken part you can do that. So, and then one thing that's also good to do is, this is canola oil, and you can even get olive oil spray. I usually just spray the chicken legs, because that kind of helps them form a crust when they bake. So I'm going to put this in the oven, and then we'll be right back, and I'll show you how to make those yummy potatoes. Now we're going to be making our oven roasted potatoes. These are just a very simple, I believe they're russet potatoes. They've got a thinner skin though. But I'm going to cut them into cubes so they're more uniform size. So if the potato is more on the wide side, I would cut it into 3 sections. Because you want them more like 1-inch cubes. And then if you have different sized potatoes, you want to try to cut them so they end up the same size pieces. So it makes for more uniform cooking and presentation. So, alright, and I'm going to put them in a mixing bowl because after I get them all chopped up, I'm going to mix them with oil and seasonings. So you just cut them up into like 1-inch bits. And this is a smaller potato, so I'll just cut it in half and then in half again.
So you just cut them into little cubes?
Yeah, pretty much into cubes, about 1 inch. And this one's rather large, so I'm going to cut this into more sections. And this is about maybe 4 pounds of potatoes. Because you have to realize that you can only put 1 layer on the baking sheet, so that way they'll cook evenly. Because I have to have air circulating around them in order to cook properly, because you want them crisp on the outside and done on the inside. And if you have them all piled high, they're not going to get done enough on the inside. And so when you're making multiple dishes, you want to start with the one that takes the longest to cook, which in this case is the chicken. Because the chicken's going to need about 10 or 15 minutes more than the potatoes to cook. So while we're getting this ready, the chicken's already going to be underway in its cooking process.
Now, can you use any kind of potato for this?
Pretty much any kind of potato. The thinner skins tend to cook faster. But as long as you scrub the potatoes really well and make sure there's no blemishes or eyes on them, you can pretty much use any potato without having to peel it. Because potato skins have a lot of nutrition, so you don't necessarily need to take them off unless they're dirty or blemished, then you would just take off those bits.
I don't know how long does it take for you to get this together?
It probably takes about 10 minutes to get the potatoes in the oven. You can do it faster, it just depends upon if the potatoes are really dirty, need to be scrubbed a lot, or how fast you are at cutting the potatoes. But this dinner comes together in probably about 20 minutes of prep time and just over an hour of baking time. So it's a good Friday night dinner. Come home, get dinner started, and then go sit and relax for an hour. And then
Drink
it'll
your
be
wine.
done. Drink your wine, watch your shows. Because that one had a little blemish on it, so I cut that off. And I think this is going to be enough potatoes, so I'm going to pass on those last two, save them for another dish. Alright, so we'll save these potatoes for another occasion. And now this bowl has a good amount of potatoes in it. And basically what you want to go for is you want to be able to have the potatoes in a single layer, mostly. So you could do as many potatoes as you want, but you'd have to use an extra pan if you had too much more. So this is just the guesstimate stage. Just give it a good swish of olive oil on the potatoes. Probably about a good tablespoon and a half. And then we're going to use chipotle roasted garlic.
Ooh.
Which is one of my favorite seasonings, especially on potatoes. So, probably about a teaspoon of that. You want them to have a good amount of flavor, but they can get over seasoned. And I did that one time. They were great, but they sure made your nose run. And a good shake of seasoned salt, garlic salt. So, and then you just stir it up until all the seasonings are combined. And get the escapees back in the bowl.
Man, they're really trying to escape.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of potatoes in this bowl. Sometimes if you scoop and turn, it kind of redirects the potatoes back to the inside of the bowl. So now they're all starting to get all mixed in here. And the other good tool for mixing potatoes is to put little plastic gloves on your hands and mix them with your hands. Because oftentimes the easiest solution is the best solution. But I already had the spoon out, so you can do it that way. See, this is going to be a little bit piled high, but I'm going to smooth them out a little bit. My family loves potatoes, so I got to make a big batch of potatoes.
Yes, we do.
So basically just try to spread this out till it's a single layer because it will cook more evenly. And then I'm just going to sprinkle a little extra salt on here. A little extra salt and olive oil. So now this is going to go in the oven. And we have it set at 400 degrees for the chicken. And then this is going to go on in and probably about 45 minutes at 400. So you start the chicken first because it has to cook the longest of the two items. Then while the chicken is starting, then you get this ready to go in about 15 minutes after the chicken. So they'll both be done thereabouts within that hour time frame. So we will come back with you once our food is done, and we will show you how beautiful the roasted potatoes and chicken legs look. Hi, now our chicken is done and our potatoes are done. And as you can tell, they're kind of glistening from the oil and the seasonings. And then the chicken is all done. And you can tell it's still stuck to the sheet, but you can tell we've got some beautiful crust on the chicken.
That looks good.
Yeah, and then to accompany our two dishes that I showed you how to make, I heated up basically some heat and serve bread that I had in the freezer, and then some green beans from our pantry.
Ooh.
So you can pull together an easy dinner after work on a Friday night. It takes you probably about 20 to 30 minutes maximum to get dinner into the oven, and then at 400 degrees. The chicken takes about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half to make sure it's all the way done. And then the potatoes about an hour or so in the oven at 400 degrees. You could even turn the oven to 425, and that would give the chicken a crisper crust and shorten the cooking time a little bit longer by a little bit less. And then this would make crispier potatoes.
And I noticed that the chicken has some white spots on it. Is that just from the buttermilk?
That's actually the coating that didn't get greasy and wet. But as you can see, it got a nice crunchy coating.
It does.
So you can see how yummy the chicken looks. It's got a nice crust on it.
Oh,
and it's nice and steaming hot.
That looks delicious.
So there is a nice family dinner that you can prepare in only about 30 minutes of active food prep time. And that includes cutting the potatoes and seasoning them and getting the chicken ready to cook. And then whenever you bring meat out of your refrigerator when it's thawing, it needs to come to room temperature by about 30 minutes before you start your food prep.
Mm-hmm.
So you can also include that time in the soaking time for the buttermilk. But meat needs to be at room temperature when it's cooked for best results. So anyway, well, thank you for joining us this evening with Miss Cindy's Kitchen, and you can see our nice Friday night dinner. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen. To get more recipes like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Share it out to your friends, family, neighbors, and leave us a comment to let us know how this recipe worked for you. And don't forget to hit that like button. Again, thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen.